Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is James and today we're going to be going over my top 10 biggest surprises of the year 2023. This has been a very interesting year where we've had a lot of movies that have disappointed me in the box office and the reception, just from my reception and critical reception, but that doesn't mean that there haven't been a lot of surprises. There were quite a few good movies this year, a lot of movies that surprised me that I did not expect to like really at all. And so this list is going to be movies that I not necessarily loved, but movies that really shocked me at how much I enjoyed them. Either movies that I wasn't excited for, didn't think looked very good, trailers maybe didn't look great, and then when I walked out of it, I said, I really enjoyed that, and I was surprised and I was kind of shocked at how much I did like those films. But, of course, as always, these are my own subjective opinions. Let me know your opinions down below in the comments. Kindly let me know what movies really surprised you throughout the year. And with all that said, let's get started. Kicking this all off at number 10 is The Boogeyman. Now, this is a horror movie that was released on June 2nd, the same day as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It was a movie that got a little bit of attention from CinemaCon, which is where I saw it, as well as opening weekend. But this is a movie that I did not expect much from it. I thought that all the trailers were not very good. I didn't like that. It just looked like a generic haunted house spooky movie. I didn't think that at the PG-13 angle was going to work very well. And the only thing that gave me hope was that they were showing it at CinemaCon and that they moved it up from a Hulu release date to a theatrical. And that got me interested, but I still didn't think it was going to be very good. And I was really surprised at how much I liked this, where I actually give it like a 3.75, 4 out of 5. It seems like a lot of people really don't like this movie, but I've never understood that. To me, it's got a really good final girl. It's got a really good story about this girl kind of trying to figure out who she really is and what to do after her mother passes away and how she can cope with that. I really liked Chris Messina, even though he kind of isn't in it very much. Once again, I thought that the final girl was really solid. I thought she brought a lot of emotion to it. I liked the mystery of what's going on, and I liked how it was dark enough where it kind of pushed the PG-13 rating a bit for a PG-13 horror film where there's like suicide and there's like child death, and from the beginning there's tension because you know children can die, anyone can die. So this was a movie that got a lot of hate from a lot of people. People called it not very good. I've seen it in a couple people's like worst or most disappointing movies of the year. I don't know. I really liked this movie, and it surprised the hell out of me. So number 10, The Boogeyman. Number 9 for me is Barbie. And this is going to shock a lot of people and not shock a lot of people that it's on this list, but I walked into this movie not really expecting much. It seemed like I was in the minority thinking I didn't think this movie looked very good, even with Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling attached to this movie. I was really worried about it because I just didn't know how they were going to be able to make this movie work on, like, apart from just being a toy movie. I was in the minority. I didn't like any of the trailers. I thought it just looked dumb. And when I went and saw it, I really liked it. Now, I'm not in the camp saying that this is one of the best movies of the year. I very much so am in the road of it's a 3.75 out of 5. But this is a movie where I was really shocked at how much I enjoyed it, and I've seen it 3 times now, and there's something so infectious about it, where it's just this fun world to go in. You got some really fun performances, especially from Ryan Gosling as Ken. Margot Robbie is always fun in these kinds of roles. She's great. I thought that the production design and everything on a technical level was great. It's a really fun movie, and it's a movie that I've enjoyed more and more every time I watch it. The first time I saw it, I was like, it's okay. Second time I watched it, I thought it was a little bit better, and the third time I watched it, I thought it was a little bit better. I still don't think it's the greatest thing ever. I still think it's a flawed film, a very good but flawed film where I think they try and tackle too much, where they're trying to do too many messages, and because that barely any of them actually get fully established, it feels like we touch on them for a couple minutes and then we just abandon them to move on to something else. And I thought the pacing was a little odd. Will Ferrell I thought was heavily underutilized. But apart from that, I really liked the movie and I was shocked. So it ends up at number 9. Number 8 is a little movie called Cobweb. This was released back in July. I think it was released on Barbenheimer weekend. Movie I'd never even heard of before. It came out, but like no marketing, and all I was told was it's like a really fucked up fairy tale movie, and that got my interest. Didn't even watch a trailer, watched it, and I loved this movie for about 2/3 of it. I was so surprised by how just dark it was, how cool it was. This story of this kid just trying to figure out what's going on in his house, what's going on with his parents. I loved all that aspect. I thought that Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan were creepy as all hell. This movie has some really great jump scares. I don't get affected by jump scares very often, but this is the first movie in a long time that I actually jumped. It was like, oh shit, that's scary. Because it's got fantastic jump scares. The sound in this film is wonderful. It's used to great effect. And the mystery is really interesting. And I like how it goes in a very dark tale, while it's also a very fantastical film. This is a movie that once again seemed to get a lot of hate from people. I don't get it. It's a movie that is a lot of fun. It's got a lot of great surprises. I like most of the twists. I will say the thing that brings it down is the third, final 25 minutes. The movie feels like the first hour is so well paced, and then there's about literally at the hour mark, it feels like it all goes downhill, kind of where certain things just start happening where some things don't come out well. There's some major logic issues involving certain characters and what they do. But apart from that, I really liked this movie. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. If the third act had been better, this probably would have been my favorite horror movie of the year. But either way, I still had a great time with it, and so it ends up at number 8. At number 7 is Past Lives. This is one of my favorite movies of the year. I'll just say it right up ahead. This premiered, I think, at South by Southwest or Sundance Film Festival, and it got picked up by A24. I never watched a trailer for it. All I heard was it was getting a lot of Oscar buzz early in the season, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll watch it, maybe I won't. I didn't even put it on my expectations list because I didn't think I was going to get to see it, because I just didn't think I was going to find time. And it's a movie where it felt like one of those movies where everyone was going to get really excited about it and then just kind of die off, and no one was going to really care about it in 3 to 4 months. But for about 6 months, all this hype was building. I got back from a trip and I realized, you know what? I should go see this movie. I had nothing else to do. And I loved this movie. I loved it so much that I went back to see it twice. I had to leave the theater about two-thirds of the way in the first time, but I loved it so much that I went back the next day and watched the entire thing all over again. This film, it has one of the best scripts of the year. I think Greta Lee gives a Best Actress worthy performance, at least of a nomination. She should be a front runner this year. I think Celine Song did a really good job at directing this film, and it baffles me that this is her first movie. I really think that it has a good messaging of how do you mourn things that you never had, and like decisions that you made that affected your life, and well, are they good or are they bad? And the kind of final messaging of the point is that like it doesn't matter what you had or what you wanted, it's what you have now, and how are you going to live your life with what you have now. The taxi goodbye scene is one of the best scenes of the year. I was absolutely choking up at the end of it. I think John Majara and TOU both need to be considered for Academy Award nominations. Both of them are great. They don't play it off as John Majara is this massive asshole. He's a great guy. He's a reasonable guy. It's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's my top 10 favorite movies of the year. I absolutely loved it. And A24 has been doing a lot of great stuff recently. I've been iffy with them over the past few years, but like from last year until this year, they've done a lot of great stuff. There's a couple movies on this list, and there's a couple movies in my top 10 that they did. And so I love this movie. Number 7, Past Lives. At number 6 is a little movie called They Cloned Tyrone, and this was one of my favorite Netflix movies of the year. I think I'd seen a still image of this movie back in 2022, and I think it was supposed to be released theatrically, but it never did. And so I kind of just forgot about this movie, didn't know anything about it. And then I saw all these great reviews of like it's a great new sci-fi film, knew nothing about it. All I knew was that there might be some cloning involved with it. And this movie took me on a wild ride where I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how they were going to conclude this, but I just loved all of it. I loved the idea that this guy dies and he just wakes up and he's alive again, and then there's all these conspiracies of who's controlling the town, the chicken, what's going on with the chicken, and there's a lot of really great social commentary in there. And so this movie just took me on a wild ride. These are the best kinds of surprises where you know nothing about them and then they're great. I wish we got more movies like this that just didn't get spoiled, where I had no idea what I was watching and I loved it. All the way until the third act, it's great. Third act, I do think that there's a couple twists and turns, especially one that, once again, loses a bit of logic, and it's a little off, or it lost me a bit, but that doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the film. It's absolutely probably my top 20 favorite movies of the year. I had a really great time with it. It shocked the living hell out of me. If you haven't seen They Clone Tyrone, go watch it. It'll be worth your time, I promise. So at number 6, They Clone Tyrone. Halfway through this list is Godzilla -1. You may have heard of this movie. It's a little small film that not many people have been talking about it, but I really want to talk about it. Now, in all seriousness, this is a really great movie. This is a movie where it has been blowing up the Hollywood sphere and critics alike for the past about a month, because this is a movie where the trailer came out, looked awesome, but no one expected it to be anywhere near as great as it was, where it's a Godzilla movie that's not really about Godzilla. It's a war movie. It's a movie about trauma. And I remember thinking the trailer looked really great because it actually is bringing Godzilla back to his origins of being a commentary on World War II and the nuclear fallout of World War II in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, as well as just kind of the trauma of war and bringing back Godzilla to being a monster. And this film was fantastic. This movie was almost one of in my top 5 favorite movies of the year. I genuinely loved it this much. It's an absolutely great movie because it's about a kamikaze pilot who feels survivor's guilt because he didn't do his job, basically. And it's about a character study. It's not about it's a war movie. It's a trauma movie, and then Godzilla's there. And that just elevates it. Godzilla is actually scary. You can feel, like, every time he shows up, it's like, oh my god, like, stuff's gonna get wrecked up. There's a reason why you're seeing this on everyone's top 5, top 10. I've seen a couple critics say it's their favorite movie of the year. I absolutely loved it. It's a 4.5 out of 5. It could have been in my top 10 of the year, but I do think that the events that happened right at the end of the movie, it's like the second to last scene, where certain characters' fates are revealed, dumbs it down a bit, because I think it just kind of loses the weight of the character and the choice that they made about halfway into the movie. But apart from that, I love the film. Absolutely go see Godzilla -1. At number 4 is Saw X. I expected this movie to be god-awful. I am not a big fan of this franchise. I love the first one. The second one is great. The third one's okay, and then from there it just went downhill. I don't like 4, 5, 6, or 7. I thought Jigsaw was middle of the road at best and really bad at worst. And then I was really surprised by Spiral, but I thought it could have been a lot better. And so I was not excited for this film. I didn't like the idea that they're just once again going back to the same law of bringing Jigsaw back. It's a movie that I didn't even bother watching it opening weekend. I was expecting like a 2.5 out of 5, maybe a 2.75 out of 5, saying it's one of the better Saw movies, but it's not great, really. It's still pretty bad. And then I saw the trailer, thought the trailer looked horrible. I was preparing to say this was one of the worst movies of the year. And then Fantastic Fest happened and all these reviews came out. And I remember seeing the reviews at like an 84%. I was like, hold on a minute, what? And I was convinced, okay, it's going to drop down to like a 60. This is probably just people that really want to see it giving these reviews. And it climbed to an 87. Then it dropped to a 79 and then went back up to an 80. And so I was genuinely shocked. So I didn't even see this movie opening weekend. I went to go see The Creator opening weekend. And the next weekend, because I heard all the good buzz about it. And this movie's great. This is my third favorite Saw movie. It's easily the best Saw movie since the first two by a landslide. It is almost as good as the second one. It's a film that actually is about Jigsaw and his character, where they actually pin him up against someone that justifies what's going on. And you have this really great rivalry between the main villain, Cecilia, and Jigsaw, John Kramer. And they do a lot of really interesting things with his character and some development with his apprentice. And all that, I thought that this movie's great. I thought the traps were great. I thought that the character development between Jigsaw and Amanda, his apprentice, were great, and it sets up what happens in the second and the third film. I thought that this worked as a really nice, like, kind of shoe into the franchise, and I'm glad we're getting Saw 11 next year. That's one of my more anticipated movies. This movie's awesome. I really liked it. Main problem, there's some timeline issues where it just doesn't make much sense, where it's like, it's in between Saw 1 and Saw 2, but he's only got a few months to live, but then they purposely say he doesn't have 6 months to live, but then there's 6 months in between Saw 2 and Saw 3, so how does that make any sense? Whatever. And there's also logic issues to the third act of like, wait, how could you predict that would happen? But apart from that, I loved it. It's top 5 horror movies of the year by far. And so go see Saw X. Huge surprise. Number 4. At number 3 is the best comedy of the year by far, and that is Joyride. This movie came out back in July. I think it was July 7th. It released on the same weekend as Insidious 5. And I expected nothing from this. Once again, it feels like one of these movies where everyone was super excited for, was getting rave reviews. I saw all the trailers, didn't think it looked very good. And then I went to CinemaCon and I saw this movie at CinemaCon, and this movie blew me away with how funny it was. I was rolling, laughing the entire movie. This is easily one of the funniest movies of the year. It's certainly up there with The Holdovers, which is in my top 10 movies of the year. I was shocked this movie didn't make my top 10 of the year because it is absolutely hilarious. The script here is great. But what I really appreciated was the friendship and the actual character development in this film. The story basically takes place about this young woman who who's adopted, and then on a work trip she realizes that she can go find her mother to potentially save this deal with a bunch of her friends. And it just takes you on this hilarious ride with these 4 friends. Each of these 4 friends feel like you would know someone. Like, I know someone like that is like each of these people. The main character is great. She's fantastic. I think that has a lot of really great emotional stuff, and I haven't seen much of her, so I want to see more of what she's done or what she's going to do. And this movie had a lot of heart. Towards the third act, I actually got a little choked up because of what happens in the third act. This movie is absolutely great. Easily one of the biggest surprises of the year. Expected nothing from it, and it gave me so much more. It's close to a 4.5 out of 5. I absolutely loved it. So number 3, Joyride. At number 2 is a horror movie that just missed my top 10 by 1 spot, and that is Talk to Me. This is by far the best horror movie of the year. This year was not a good year for horror. It felt like just every month we were getting average to bad horror movies. This was the one that was genuinely just incredible and fucking awesome. We had a couple others like When Evil Lurks, which was really good, Saw X, Evil Dead Rise was pretty decent, Renfield I had a lot of fun with, but this was the only one that I genuinely loved. And once again, the movie is a film that has a great story. It's got a fantastic leading performance from Sophie Wilde. She's going to be a star. She's incredible in this film. And I was really shocked to learn that this was made by YouTubers and this is their first time film. Once again, A24 knocking it out of the park, where they just deliver such a interesting script, such an interesting character. Like, so fascinating to watch this movie and just like see how it's a very interesting spin on the possession genre, which it feels like we don't get a very interesting spin on those movies anymore, where it's kind of used as a method of dopamine and drug use, and it's a message towards alcoholism and like addiction, and it's got a lot of really great like subtext in there, but if you don't want to look for the subtext, it's just an awesome horror movie. It's actually disturbing. It's like, me and my friend watched it for the second time. I showed this to my friend. He loved it, but he was also kind of shaken by it. It's not for the faint of heart. It's very depressing. It's very dark. But it's a great movie, and I like how this film leaves in on an ambiguous note where it lets you reframe everything that you've seen, where was that really her mother? Was her dad trying to kill her? Is she dead? What really happened? Was she pushed? Did she jump? What really happened? Really sucks that this movie didn't make my top 10, but I love this movie. I can't wait to see the sequel and hopefully the prequel, my runner-up for most surprising of the year, is Talk to Me. And that leaves my number one, which is Emerald Fennell's Saltburn. God damn, I love this movie. This is a movie from the Emerald Fennell who directed the absolutely great film Promising Young Woman back in 2020. I really liked that movie. It's like a 4.25 out of 5. Great script, great direction, great lead performance. So I was really curious to see what her next film would be, and it premiered, I think, at the Telluride Film Festival, and it got a lot of really divisive reviews off the bat. And so that kind of turned me off. And then I didn't really like any of the trailers. I thought it all kind of looked like, like this looks production-wise pretty great, but I don't think it's going to be for me. So I wasn't really planning on seeing it because I was like going out to see like Napoleon and Thanksgiving and all these other movies. And I got a text from my friend when I got on Napoleon saying, hey, you gotta go watch Saltburn. It's one of the best movies of the year. And his and my movie tastes oftentimes line up. And I was like, okay, this guy's not a movie fan, like a massive cinephile, but if he's loving it, I think I'm gonna adore it. So I walked in, watched it with my family, and wow, this is an interesting movie to watch with your family. Sex movie. No, this is a movie that took me on, once again, a wild ride where I didn't know much about it, and throughout the entire movie, it left me guessing what was going to happen next. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I was very curious, like, who this main character is. Barry Keoghan is great. I think that he needs to be in conversation for the Best Actor nomination. Jacob Elordi really has brought himself back. He had a great year with this and Priscilla. Once again, he plays a really great gentle giant kind of character. Rosamund Pike, this is her best performance since Gone Girl, where she just plays this very kind of like subtle humor and subtle mom to this rich ass family. She's great. Richard Price is awesome in this movie. Everyone in this movie is great, and this movie has a fantastic script where it keeps you guessing the entire way, where at one point it seems like it's gonna be something else, and then it feels like every 20 minutes it switches it up, so it leaves you on your toes, it leaves you on your feet, you're never allowed to take a breath, and that works in this movie's favor. It's the best movie of the year that is in the last few years, that is a wolf in sheep's clothing movie, where you think that certain characters are doing certain things. It sets up certain things of you need to be careful of these characters. Characters are dangerous. And then it flips you on the head and makes you think, nope, this character is the real villain of the film. I absolutely love this film. It's in my top 10 favorite movies of the year. I think it needs to be considered for the Best Picture Academy Award nominations. I think it needs to be, Emerald Fennell deserves to get in for Best Director. So my biggest surprise of the year is Saltburn, easily. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching my video. Really appreciate it. Please let me know down in the comments, what are your biggest surprises of the year? What movies did you not expect much from and then absolutely loving, or just shocked you how much you enjoyed them? I hope to do 2 more of these kinds of videos. I hope to do my most disappointing next week and my top 10 best movies. I probably won't be able to do them for the next 4 or 5 days because I'm going to be on a trip. But when I get back, I really hope to do those movies, and then I'm going to try and get out a review from Night Swim. And maybe if you're lucky, I'll do a rundown of all the movies I saw in 2023, ranked from worst to best. That might be a live stream. But thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I'll see you on the other side. Bye.